You're listening to Startup Stories on Good Morning Delhi with Sarthak.
That's what you're doing. Listen to Startup Stories, where we're trying to see if we can make you listen to the beating heart of the startup rather than the more dry, vapid rectangles of the Excel sheet. Though that is important as well, because we can't survive on love and fresh air, which is something that Sumit from Thisday App will probably endorse. Sumit, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks a lot for having me here.
Love and fresh air is probably not enough, but passion and and a little bit of junoon certainly is, isn't it?
That's what gets us going every day, right? So that's what makes us wake up and then come back to the office and then do everything that we do on a daily basis.
So of course, full disclosure, I've been on Thisday App because we were at the Jaipur Lit Fest,
Yes.
and a lot of your people had come and interviewed us as well, which was actually wonderful. But tell us, I mean, I could tell you what I've read on the internet about it, but that will lack the heart. No, the beating heart is yours. So please tell us the story of this day and what it's about.
So this day started back in peak pandemic, October 2020, wherein Chetan, my co-founder, and I, we had just we built another startup. We were there with that startup for over 5 years,
Right.
And we actually wanted to do something closer to our hearts. We wanted to build something that would make people fall in love with culture, because culture is everywhere, right? हम बोलते हैं, we say रोटी कपड़ा मकान, but कौन सी रोटी खा रहे हैं, क्या कपड़े पहन रहे हैं, and कहाँ रह रहे हैं is all culture, right?
Absolutely.
So what we wanted to do was, we wanted to make it fun. We wanted to tell amazing stories, because every time we visit a place, we end up asking the story behind the place,
Right.
because that's what makes a place special, and that's
sure.
what the journey has been all about.
That's of course an absolutely wonderful journey, and culture is something that everyone's interested in as well, because right now, the pride that that our own heritage has is something that's being talked about increasingly, and hopefully that will also mean that the pride will translate into knowledge, which is important to have that pride, I think. But the thing that I want to ask is that today there's a glut of information and not enough knowledge. I keep this become a bit of a favorite phrase of mine, that information is the thread that is bound together to these are the threads that bind together for knowledge, but we are increasingly confusing one for the other. So is knowledge a part of your platform as well?
See, the thing with us as humans is that the day we are born till the day we die, everybody is trying to teach us something.
Yeah.
Starting with our parents to Fufajis to the neighbors, everybody is trying to teach us something.
Absolutely.
Right? The moment you go ahead and then tell the end user that, okay, hey, this is another platform who's going to teach you something, that's where the interest goes down.
Absolutely.
What we want to do is, we don't want to impart knowledge. We want to tell stories. Now, if the stories are able to make the end user, let's say, do further research, try to find the actual depth behind a story, or depth behind the culture, or whatever is interesting to them, then we have solved the problem.
Absolutely. I mean, the thing is that you can't wag a finger and tell people right now. If you become the person who puts an arm around the shoulder and says, come, let's do this together, which is what this day does. So if you've not experienced the app, if you haven't tasted what it has to offer, the menu of stories, then you might want to. Just type in this day and you'll get it.
Yeah, this day.
So that's what you do. Simple as that. All humans are stories at the end of the day, and a well-told story is just so seductive as a. But there's also the thing that today culture is also becoming a little weaponized. It's becoming a bit of an agenda. Are you taking conscious steps to sidestep that particular pitfall?
So the beauty about being a storytelling platform is that you don't have to take sides. There is always going to be two sides of a particular coin, right? So, for example, if there have been, India as a country has had so many different, micro communities all over the country, right? So, and there have been multiple fights and wars between these micro communities.
For sure.
And each one of these micro communities is going to have a story to tell.
Yeah.
The one who wins has a different story to tell. The one who loses has a different story to tell.
For sure.
The one who stays has a different story to tell. The one who leaves has a different story to tell.
Absolutely.
For us, it is important to tell these stories, because if you were to start taking sides, or if you were to start over-analyzing everything,
Sure.
it becomes an academic platform, and we are not an academic platform.
Absolutely. You're there to tell stories.
Yes.
What people do with the stories is entirely up to them, because
Yeah.
that is what democratization of art truly means.
Yes.
And stories, well, in Delhi just recently, one dig at the Purana Killa excavation site, just one trench, has actually brought out artifacts from 6 different eras, from the Kushan to the Mughal era. So that's the kind of stories that they're hard to tell. But what are the mechanics? What are the nitty-gritties? How does the Thisday app work? So if I were to log on to Thisday app, what would be my logical progressions?
So so there are multiple stakeholders for Thisday as a platform, right? So there are storytellers who get vetted extensively before becoming a storyteller on the platform. While we want people to tell amazing stories, we still want them to do research, right? We just don't want them to open the first page of Google and whatever comes, put that across as a story.
That warms the cockles of our hearts so much. Yeah.
So from a storyteller perspective, once you become a storyteller on the platform, you get to tell these amazing stories, and then your peers actually review a story. So that finally what goes on the platform is well reviewed and it's a fun read. Then we have so many illustrators who take these stories and then they create these beautiful comics out of them.
Wow.
So that, let's say I could be an end user, I don't want to read, because reading again is a very rare phenomenon in today's world.
For sure.
So people want to, let's say, consume comics. Then what we do is we have these illustrators who turn that huge 800 word piece story into a comic, which is easier to consume.
Sure.
And then we have partnerships which help us convert all of these stories into audio stories, so that if you don't want to read, you can at least listen to it while you're on a drive.
Absolutely.
So as an end user, your logical progression is you open the app and you start consuming stories in whatever format you're comfortable with.
Right. And you choose what kind of stories you listen to as well.
Bilkul. So it's like, if you want wars, if you want to know more about wars, if you want to know more about heritage, if you want to know more about folklore, if you want to know more about, culture is huge, right? So
Absolutely.
we've tried to focus on as many categories as possible, but now we also want to go more in depth.
Sure.
Explore more about heritage, explore more about folklores, explore Bihu gets celebrated at least four times, right?
Yes.
Why? What's
Yeah.
the story behind that?
Absolutely.
And that's
Absolutely.
the fascinating bit.
So what's the funding scene like for this day?
So we raised a seed round back in Jan 2022
Okay.
from a clutch of investors, including 9 Unicorns, Titan Capital,
Right.
Sujit and a couple of other folks, and Dhruv from Bharat Pay. And fantastic mentors to have, fantastic investors to have,
Sure.
because what they provide is not just the money part, but also the part which is helping us grow a category that never existed before.
Sure.
So that's that. We've decently funded, so that's working out well.
And what about the competition bit? Because I'm assuming that this was a bit of a foray into unknown territory, but is there competition?
There is no competition from a culture category perspective, but then if you look at individual formats, for example, let's say audio, we have so many startups. For text, we have so many independent magazines, independent platforms.
Sure.
And what we want to do is, we don't want to be known for being a magazine or an audio platform. We want to be known for being the cultural destination for India and globally.
Which leads me to the question, why the name Thisday?
When we initially started, we were thinking about anchoring every story that goes on the platform to a date, to a particular day.
Okay.
Because that helps us, it becomes very difficult. If I were to ask you, tell me a story about some culture, or tell me,
It becomes a little too wide. Yeah.
So this actually kind of helped us anchor it in the initial days, but then as we grew, we realized ki not a lot of stories have dates associated with them. So that's why we've just kind of expanded that.
Sure. And what about the scaling bit? I mean, is there expectation management, or is there ambition as far as the scaling up of the endeavor is concerned?
We currently see around 13.5 odd million users every month. And we are rapidly scaling, we are rapidly increasing the overall creator base. So there are ambitions to grow as much as possible, but then we also want to do it from a sustainable standpoint.
Yeah.
Being second time founders, what we understand is that you can either grow very fast and then fall very fast, or you can grow relatively sustainably, and in today's market, that's what's required.
There's also the relationship between growth, expansion, and quality and productivity. So do you feel that is a bit of an exponential connection, or do you think there's a parallel line that can go as far as growth and quality is concerned?
it is very difficult to find that balance, to be honest. So effectively what happens is, irrespective of how many times you have founded a startup, you always fall into that paradox. You always end up trying to grow very fast and forgetting about the quality.
Sure.
What happens is that this time we did not want to go into that paradox. We did not want to grow so fast that the quality was beyond our control. So yeah, we're trying to control it,
Sure.
but we also want to grow as fast as possible.
So this has been a very, very nice conversation, because it's important. It was lovely to see how you've said that telling stories is important from all sides and perspectives, but it is never a good idea to preach.
Yeah.
Which is what is important, because as you said, more often than not, we're told what to do. So it's probably on an app. It's a great idea to just choose.
Yeah.
But since we're living in the world of social media, it's only proper that we ask you to do a listicle for us on radio. So for those who might want to start out taking the first tentative steps in the world that you've already sort of strode into, so to speak, what are those 3 to 5 points that you'd want any new startup founder in culture in particular, or in any other field in general, to keep in mind?
First things first, see, figuring out the problem that needs to be solved takes a lot of time.
Okay. Give us an example.
For example, it's not very evident from day one as to what you're building is going to solve the problem that you thought it's going to solve. That never happens. It's very rare that it happens.
So what was the problem that Thisday was trying to solve?
We just could not find amazing stories about the places that we went. For example, I'll give you a simple example.
Sure.
I went to Kasol, right? Now, Manikaran is a place there.
Yeah.
Now, Manikaran there is a reason why it's called Manikaran. Because monies used to come out of the springs which are there, right?
Okay.
Now, after 1905,
Money
Kangra
being precious stones.
precious stones,
Yeah.
right? And after 1905 earthquake, they stopped. That's the story.
Okay.
That's the story, right?
Okay.
If I were to, so if I were to preach you that, or if I were to tell you that story from an academic perspective, you might never even think about it.
Sure.
But we are not able to find such stories.
Sure.
This story is actually there in a board outside the Manikaran Gurdwara Sahib.
Oh.
Right. So I read it there.
Okay. Okay.
So I wanted to tell this story.
Right.
I could not find a platform where I could tell this story. Plus, every brand wants to associate with culture in one way or the other.
Right.
The thing is that there is no de facto location or de facto platform that does only culture.
Sure.
There are so many heterogeneous platforms out there that end up doing so many other things in addition to culture, that culture gets lost.
Laser focus is what you're saying.
Yes.
Sure. Sure.
So we want to build something with a hardcore focus and then expand as we move ahead, right?
Sure.
So we are not going to say that culture is a market which is going to be let's say $1 trillion market or something like that. We don't know that.
For sure.
But we want to go into that and then start expanding. So coming back to the question that you asked, if I build a software, right, I don't know the exact use case of that software. I just know that, okay, this is going to help so and so people do so and so things.
Right.
Now, over a period of time, you actually figure out that, okay, while this can be useful for 100 odd people, it's actually extremely useful for only those 20 people who are out there.
So that's how you find the problem to solve.
Exactly.
Okay.
So
Sure.
that's what, find a problem to solve. It takes time, but just be passionate, because what happens is that more often than not, it is the passion that moves the entrepreneur forward.
Right.
And
of course.
it is very easy to say. It sounds very.
I know.
I mean, it sounds very.
It's very cliched or whatever.
Very
else it is,
cliche.
but it is. Yeah.
But it is what it is.
For
right?
sure.
Because
for sure.
in the end, when you're waking up in the morning and you receive an email from a client saying that, okay, we don't want to work with you, or maybe the deal isn't going to go through, the only thing that keeps you going is that.
That's a great point. Sure. So that's number 2. Number 3.
Third one is effectively. There are going to be lots of ups and downs when you go for funding, right? So be very clear that nobody is going to fund you, and then make your plans. Right? So
Yeah.
in a market which is very hunky dory, that's where everybody is ready to start funding you, right? But whenever you're making your plans, whenever you're making a product, whenever you're building a team, be sure, or rather plan as if nobody is going to give you a single penny to grow.
That's a brutally honest bit of advice, and I think sometimes we need that kind of raw honesty, which is what we've had from you in such generous proportion. Sumit, this has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks a lot.
And for telling us about Thisday app. You can of course check it out. It's important to have that knowledge. We're just trying to tell you that there is something like that. What you do with it is entirely up to you. Sumit from Thisday app, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.